Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories about when they went beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samalin. I'm the principal of Samalin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud Lawyers Who Care and learn from them. Today, my guest is Douglas Hand. He is a partner at Hand Baldachin Associates LLP in New York City, and their firm is one of the preeminent fashion lawyers in the country. Welcome, Douglas.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
So, Douglas, tell us how you came to the law.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I grew up in Southern California, notwithstanding that I've been in New York for over 30 years now. But I think for me, the law was a discipline that kind of grounded both my desire for logic and order in the world, coupled with the fact that the world is a tremendously chaotic place. And there's nothing like the practice of law in the fashion industry to really have that hit home. It is a very sporadic industry, a very cyclical industry, but one based on taste, which is so quixotic that, that's why people go out and buy the new as they do.
And so as you chose to go into the law and then you say, all right, I'm going to practice at big firm, small firm, sole proprietor, big law 100, what drove you to your path and your firm's path?
Yeah, my path that was relatively abrupt, I guess I would say. I graduated NYU with a JD MBA, started at Sherman and Sterling in their international M&A department, and spent 6 years doing cross-border public company M&A, which was fantastic and incredibly gratifying, really learning from some masters. Practicing in New York and also for about a year stint in the Paris office that Sherman had. But it became apparent to me at that juncture, kind of where I felt like I could do a deal, soup to nuts, get it all the way to closing, that working with creative people was going to be a struggle in that environment. When you're working for public companies in the M&A space, you're often working with a whole legal department and an investment banking firm, and the principals of the company, even if that company happens to be in a creative industry, aren't really at the table. And so I wanted to do more private company work. I wanted to do more work, as I said, with creative individuals, but I didn't want to be an entertainment lawyer. I didn't want to be a music lawyer. I was trained as a corporate lawyer. My mind works that way. And loving fashion as I do, it just seemed to fall together with the realization that it's an underserved industry from a legal perspective. It certainly ticks the box in terms of being creative. It is incredibly creative. Some of the designers that we represent are amongst the most talented artistic people I know, but it's also a huge industry. It is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and therefore the seriousness with which transactions are taken, not to suggest that entertainment and music they're not taken seriously, but it's a different type of practice. It just met more with what I wanted to do, and so I spun out with a small group of lawyers from Sherman. This is now over 22 years ago, to form our current firm here in New York. And rather than focus on an area of law, we really try to focus on the fashion industry and serve its intellectual property needs, its commercial and corporate needs, its employment needs, even its real estate needs. And I have lawyers that do that. I'll tell you, my real estate lawyers do nothing but retail leases. They're not dirt lawyers. They do retail leases because that's what the real estate law world is to fashion brands. And the IP lawyers, won't surprise you, do a lot of design protection, a lot of trademark work. But again, all focused and grounded by that industry as opposed to really driven by the area of law.
So, the tentacles that you were kind of alluding to in the fashion business, we've seen that, and not to date, you or me, But MTV kind of made that a little bit this cross section between intellectual property and fashion and music and things along those lines. Are you seeing any new technology that is moving the fashion business forward to maybe just brick and mortars business into something that's even bigger, and how that challenges your firm?
Yeah. Well, challenges to the industry are often opportunities for a law firm. You don't always love that your clients are faced with challenges, but they often give you work, and work is what we're here to do.
Mhm.
I would say one of the major shifts, a tectonic shift in the industry, happened quite a while ago with online sales. I mean, you spoke of brick and mortar, and that is the traditional model of where people would go to shop for clothes and try on clothes. But online sales have become absolutely massive, not just in fashion, but obviously in many other industries. And that has had significant impact on protection of designs to the extent they can be protected, of channels of distribution, which are very, very important to brands. And by that, I mean, people would feel one way if they saw a Gucci or a Dior garment in a Kohl's or a Kmart, not to
Mm-hmm.
besmirch, though they're just
Of
a
course.
certain price point.
Mm-hmm.
And people tend to associate price point with quality and with prestige, and that is what brands often want to uphold. That becomes much harder online, where you're not walking into a store environment, you're not being greeted by a slick salesperson. You're dealing with a static, two-dimensional image that everybody can put up, and that has created a lot of opportunities for brands, but also challenges. So that's one area. Also, I mean, brands are now looking at designs that go on avatars and go on digital figures. The advent of AI, which has touched every industry, fashion is certainly not insulated from that, and it has created opportunities, but also concern among the design community that certain elements of design, they'll be replaced, by the bot as opposed to the human being.
Mm-hmm. And so, looking at this podcast where we highlight attorneys that go above and beyond. Any interesting client stories? Obviously, protect the innocent.
Right.
Anything interesting that you want to share?
Well, I think I can speak broadly about the many eponymous brands that we have represented. That is fairly common, where a designer who is the de facto founder of a fashion label names the brand after him or herself. And that seems very natural, very artistic. We've seen centuries of artists sign their works. But in the context of M&A, when you are selling control over your company, that becomes a very fraught exercise when the company also bears your name. You are selling the right to determine those channels of distribution, potentially, to have input on quality, to have input on brand positioning. And those are all things that, if your name is Michael Kors, or your name is Marc Jacobs, or your name is Ralph Lauren, uh, you're still alive, and you care about what that name means, not just to consumers, but for your legacy. And so I say it's fraught because, obviously, if you have the benefit to name your brand something like Rag and Bone or Supreme, you're not faced with those issues. We often represent founders faced with those very issues. And I think tactically, we have been very good at, even in the context of a sale of control, making sure that those designers still have a modicum of control over things that are important to their legacy. And we justify that through a deep business understanding of the industry. Look, the designer is the golden goose. And if that designer isn't happy and isn't seeing the brand positioned the way they have envisioned, you're not getting what you pay for as the acquirer. It makes good business sense to give them some of these rights. And so in that tussle, in that M&A negotiation, we often have very, very salient arguments that are able to move the needle, I think, meaningfully for clients, where Otherwise, in a sale of control, they certainly wouldn't get the degree of rights that we're often able to negotiate for them.
Does that granting of rights create a discount of the sale price necessarily, or a premium of the sale price?
Very, very good question. And, I'm on sometimes both sides of that argument. I would say there is a somewhat of a discount inherent in the human risk of acquiring a brand that also bears someone's name. Slavery is not legal, right? So you can't force Jill Sander to work for the Jill Sander brand. And in fact, she doesn't. And, she has post the sale and then left and then came back and then left again. That is a huge risk factor for an acquirer to know that that individual, I mean, let's take a Kanye West or a John Galliano. People get embroiled in controversy as well. And what happens to their brand and the value of that brand to consumers, it plummets. And so I do think there is a discount. And I think that discount is deserved because of that very real human risk.
So just so folks know, today my guest is Douglas Hand. He is a partner and fashion lawyer at Hand Baldachin and Associates in New York City. By the way, Douglas, so that people can get in touch with you, can you share us your phone number twice?
Sure. My firm phone number where I can be reached is 212-956-9539. That is 212-956-9539.
And folks, can you find you online, or where's your favorite place?
Certainly. I mean, I'll plug for my own podcast that is much more longer format, but where I interview often clients and folks in the fashion industry with a focus on fashion law. It's called The Laws of Style. Andrew, I happen to be sitting right by my book that I published called The Laws of Style, which the American Bar Association published many years ago. And for any lawyer interested in reading up, particular to menswear, how interesting and difficult it can be to dress in this age of business casual, it's a great book to read. But certainly the podcast really goes into our practice at HBA and what fashion law is all about. So
and where can they find that?
Sorry.
And where can they find that?
They can find a show format like this on YouTube, as well as on iTunes or Spotify. Just searching The Laws of Style by Douglas Hand, and they will find it. Yeah.
Excellent. Douglas, thank you again. This has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys that go above and beyond for their clients. Douglas is a premier example of that. If you're an attorney or know one that does go above and beyond, feel free to reach out to us, 914-666-6600. Number again, 914-666-6600. Douglas Hand, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate it. Bye now.